Welcome to History to Relax. Before we begin our journey into the heart of the ancient world, I invite you to find a space of absolute stillness. Whether you are settling into bed, resting in a quiet corner of your home, or simply closing your eyes after a long day, allow your body to become heavy and relaxed. Let the tension leave your jaw, your shoulders, and your hands. Breathe in the stillness of the present and exhale the noise of the modern world. Before we set sail, I have a small favor to ask. If these journeys bring you peace, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It costs nothing at all, but it is the most meaningful way you can help this channel grow and allow me to keep creating these historical escapes for you. Also, please leave a comment below and tell me which period of history, which lost city, or which ancient mystery you would like to drift into next. Your suggestions are the heartbeat of this channel, and I read every single one. Now, let us leave the present behind and travel back across the veil of time. Imagine, if you will, the year is 250 before the Common Era. You are standing on the deck of a great merchant galley, a vessel crafted from the finest Lebanese cedar and sturdy oak. The ship is a masterpiece of ancient engineering, designed to traverse the vast, unpredictable expanse of the Mediterranean Sea. Beneath your feet, you can feel the rhythmic pulse of the ocean. It is a slow, hypnotic vibration, the heavy timber of the hull meeting the resistance of the turquoise water. The ship groans softly, a deep, woody sound that feels like a lullaby, as it rolls gently with the long, low swells of the open sea. The sun is beginning its slow, majestic descent. It hangs low in the western sky, a heavy orb of molten gold that paints the horizon in shades of bruised purple, vivid orange, and soft, dusty rose. The light reflects off the water in a million shimmering fractures, creating a path of brilliance that seems to lead directly to the edge of the world. The air here is cool and sweet. It carries the sharp, clean scent of salt spray, mixed with the earthy aroma of the ship's ropes and the faint, resinous scent of the pitch used to seal the hull. As the northern breeze, the Etesian wind, catches the great linen sail, you hear it snap and billow, a sound like a distant drumbeat guiding you home. For days, you have seen nothing but the infinite blue of the sea and the sky. But now, as you look toward the southern horizon, a thin white line begins to emerge from the heat haze. At first, it looks like a low-lying cloud or a trick of the light. But as the ship draws closer, the shape begins to solidify. It is Alexandria, the crown jewel of Egypt, the city of marble, intellect, and light. Yet, before you see the city's walls or its bustling markets, your eyes are drawn upward, held captive by a sight that defies belief. Rising from the edge of the sea is a mountain of stone, a pillar of brilliant white limestone that seems to pierce the very fabric of the heavens. This is the Pharos of Alexandria. It is one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and standing before it, you understand why. It is not merely a lighthouse, it is a monument to the spirit of discovery. Designed by the architect Sostratus of Cnidus, it was built to stand as a sentinel over the greatest collection of knowledge humanity has ever known. As your ship glides closer, the sheer, staggering scale of the tower becomes overwhelming. It stands over 100 meters tall, its white surface polished so finely that it gleams like a pearl in the fading sunlight. The Pharos is built in 3 magnificent tiers, a symphony of geometry and strength. The base is a massive square, its walls thick and sloped to withstand the fury of the winter storms and the constant salt-heavy breath of the sea. Above this foundation rises an octagonal middle section, elegant and slender, its 8 sides facing the winds of the world. And at the very summit, A circular tower holds the great lantern, the light that never sleeps. Look up at the very top, where the circular tower meets the sky. You can see a thin, graceful wisp of white smoke drifting into the air. A massive bonfire of resinous wood burns there, tended by men who move like tiny shadows against the brilliance of the fire. But the true secret of the Pharos lies in its mirrors. Giant, curved discs of polished bronze and glass are positioned behind the flames, catching the light and projecting it far across the dark water. To the sailors of antiquity, this was more than engineering. It was a divine light, a star brought down to the earth by the power of the mind. It could be seen for 30 miles, a golden beacon of hope that promised safety to those lost in the darkness of the deep. The ship begins to turn, its course guided by the steady hand of the pilot. You move past the island of Pharos itself, a rugged piece of land that has been transformed into the gateway of the world. You see the Heptastadion, the great causeway that connects the island to the mainland of Egypt. It is a massive dike, nearly a mile long, cutting through the water and creating two distinct protected harbors. As the ship enters the Portus Magnus, the great harbor, the world suddenly changes. The restless energy of the open sea is left behind. The water here is still and deep, a dark emerald mirror that reflects the white marble palaces and the tall swaying palms of the city. The transition is profound. It is as if you have stepped from a windy, sun-bleached plain into the cool, quiet sanctuary of a great cathedral. The roar of the waves is replaced by the muffled, gentle sounds of a harbor settling into the evening. Look around you as the ship moves slowly toward its berth. The harbor is a forest of masts and rigging. You see tall, elegant merchant ships from Phoenicia, their hulls painted in vibrant reds and blues, with large eyes depicted on the bows to watch over the crew. There are heavy, broad-beamed grain barges from the Nile, their decks piled high with the golden harvest of the Egyptian soil, destined to feed the cities of the Mediterranean. You see sleek, narrow triremes of the Royal Navy, their bronze rams gleaming just above the waterline like the teeth of a predator at rest. The scents of the city now reach you in full, rich layers. It is a tapestry of aromas that tells the story of Alexandria's wealth. You smell the sharp, clean scent of freshly hewn cedar and oak from the shipyards. You smell the pungent, earthy aroma of drying papyrus, the very material that will hold the words of the scholars. You smell the exotic, intoxicating fragrances of the trade routes, cinnamon from the east, frankincense from the deep deserts, and the sweet, heavy scent of lotus flowers drifting from the royal gardens. As the sun finally dips below the horizon, the sky transforms into a canvas of deep indigo and velvet black. The Pharos light grows stronger, its golden beams sweeping across the harbor like a protective hand, illuminating the ripples of the water and the white stone of the quays. You look towards the shore, toward the royal quarter known as the Bruchion. It is a place of absolute order and beauty. Wide, gridded streets, designed by the architect Dinocrates, stretch out like a map of the human mind. They are lined with grand colonnades that offer deep, cool shadows and statues of gods and heroes that stand silent watch over the citizens. There, nestled among the temples of Isis and the palaces of the Ptolemies, lies the Mausia, the Temple of the Muses. It is a sprawling complex of white stone, surrounded by lush, emerald-green gardens that are kept vibrant by the ingenious irrigation of the Nile. Within those walls is the great library of Alexandria. Even from the deck of your ship, you can feel the gravity of the place. It is a silent fortress of thought, a repository for hundreds of thousands of papyrus scrolls. Every play by Sophocles, every map by Hecataeus, Every observation of the stars by the Babylonians and every law of the Egyptians is gathered there. It is the memory of the human race, housed in a sanctuary of silence. The ship nudges gently against the wooden pier of the royal quay. You hear the soft, satisfying thud of the hull meeting the pilings and the creak of the thick hemp ropes as the sailors secure the vessel. The gangplank is lowered, its heavy wood striking the marble of the quay with a sound that echoes through the quiet evening. Step off the ship. Feel the ground beneath your feet. It is solid, cool, and made of the finest stone. The heat of the Egyptian day is still radiating from the buildings, but it is being chased away by the gentle, cooling night air that flows from the sea. The city is beginning to settle. The shouts of the dock workers are growing distant, replaced by the low murmur of conversation from the nearby villas. In the distance, you see the torches being lit along the walkways of the Mausian. The scholars are finishing their evening meals, putting away their reed pens, and preparing for a night of study under the starlight. You are no longer a traveler of the sea. You are a guest of history. You have arrived at the threshold of the greatest library the world will ever see. Take a deep breath of this ancient, salt-tinged air. Let your mind rest in the knowledge that you are safe in the city of Alexandria. The journey through the water is over, and the journey through the mind is about to begin. For now, let the steady, pulsing light of the Pharos guide you into a state of perfect peace. The stars are coming out over the Mediterranean, and the scrolls of Alexandria are waiting for us. As you step away from the ship and leave the swaying rhythm of the sea behind, the solid ground of Alexandria meets your feet with a grounding, silent weight. The transition from water to stone is a sensory shift that marks the beginning of your true immersion into the city of intellect. The quay is paved with massive, rectangular blocks of limestone, worn smooth by the passage of millions of sandals, cartwheels, and the soft, persistent touch of the harbour mist. Even at this late hour, the stone holds a gentle warmth, a memory of the intense Egyptian sun that has beat down upon it throughout the day. This warmth radiates upward through the soles of your feet, providing a comforting, steady heat as the evening air begins to cool. Before we walk deeper into the heart of the city, I want to remind you that your presence here is what keeps this journey alive. If the stillness of this ancient world brings you comfort, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It is a small gesture that costs nothing, but it allows me to continue building these historical sanctuaries for you. And as we walk, think of the places you would like to visit next. Perhaps the cherry blossoms of ancient Kyoto or the misty peaks of the Andes, and leave a comment below with your suggestions. Your voice helps decide where our next voyage will take us. Now, let us continue our walk. Behind you, the great harbour remains a dark, shimmering expanse, the lighthouse of Pharos casting its long, rhythmic beam across the ripples. But as you turn your back to the water and face the city, the horizon is dominated by the majestic architecture of the Bruchion, the royal quarter. This is not a city built by accident. It is a city of pure geometry. You find yourself standing at the beginning of a wide, grand boulevard that stretches out before you like a ribbon of pale silver under the moon. This is the heart of the grid system designed by Dinocrates, where every street meets at a perfect right angle, reflecting the Greek obsession with order, logic, and harmony. As you begin to walk, the sound of your footsteps on the marble becomes a rhythmic, soothing cadence. The noise of the harbour, the creaking of masts and the shouts of sailors fades into a distant, muffled hum. Here, in the royal quarter, the atmosphere is one of profound, regal silence. The streets are lined with immense colonnades, rows of towering Doric and Ionic columns that reach toward the stars. In the moonlight, These columns cast long, sharp shadows across the pavement, creating a pattern of dark and light that moves with you. The shadows are deep and cool, smelling faintly of damp stone and the incense that drifts from the nearby temples of Serapis and Isis. Notice the air as it changes. The salty bite of the Mediterranean is now softened by the scents of the royal gardens. Alexandria is a city of water, not just from the sea, but from the Nile itself. An intricate system of underground aqueducts and pipes carries the fresh, life-giving water of the river into the heart of the city. You hear the soft, musical bubbling of a nearby fountain, a hidden spring in a courtyard behind a limestone wall. The sound of water hitting a marble basin is crystalline and pure, a delicate melody that cuts through the stillness of the night. The trees here are silhouettes of deep emerald against the indigo sky. You walk past groves of date palms, their long feathered fronds rustling in the breeze with a sound like falling rain. There are sycamore figs with thick, twisting branches and rows of slender cypresses that stand like silent sentinels guarding the path to the mansion. The fragrance of the gardens is intoxicating. The heavy, sweet scent of night-blooming jasmine, the spicy aroma of laurel, and the crisp, clean smell of watered earth. As you move deeper into the Bruchion, the scale of the buildings becomes even more impressive. To your left, the royal palace of the Ptolemies rises in a series of terraces, its windows dark, but its white walls glowing with an ethereal light. This is the house of the kings, who transformed a small fishing village into the intellectual capital of the world. You think of Ptolemy Soter, the general of Alexander the Great, who stood on these very shores and envisioned a place where all the world's wisdom could be gathered under one roof. He wanted more than a kingdom of land. He wanted a kingdom of the mind. The walk is effortless. The ground is perfectly level, and the cooling night breeze at your back seems to nudge you forward toward your destination. You pass by the Soma, the magnificent tomb where Alexander the Great himself lies in a sarcophagus of gold and glass, a silent witness to the city that bears his name. There is a sense of immense history in every stone here, a feeling that you are walking through a living library even before you reach the Mansion. The architecture reflects a unique marriage of two worlds. You see the graceful, mathematical lines of Greece, the pediments, the friezes, and the statues of philosophers, standing alongside the monumental, eternal weight of Egypt. Obelisks of red granite, brought down the Nile from Aswan, stand at the entrances to public squares, their hieroglyphs telling stories of pharaohs who lived thousands of years before the Greeks arrived. This blending of cultures creates an atmosphere that is both sophisticated and ancient, a place where the new world meets the old in perfect equilibrium. As you approach the gates of the Mansion, the Temple of the Muses, the silence deepens even further. This is a sacred precinct, dedicated to the 9 goddesses of inspiration. It is not just a building, but a sprawling campus of thought. You see the high walls of the Peripatos, the covered walkways where scholars like Euclid and Archimedes once paced, debating the laws of geometry and the mechanics of the universe. The moonlight hits the smooth surfaces of the walkway, making it look like a path of liquid light. You reach a set of massive bronze doors, intricately carved with scenes of the Muses presiding over the arts and sciences. They are closed now, but the air around them feels charged with the energy of centuries of study. Beyond these doors lies the Great Hall, and beyond that, the rooms where the scrolls are kept. You can imagine the thousands of papyrus rolls inside, each one a handwritten testament to a human life, a discovery, or a poem. You stop for a moment at the entrance, leaning against a cool granite pillar. Looking back toward the city, you see the distant glow of the Pharos lighthouse still sweeping the horizon. The city of Alexandria sleeps, but it is a wakeful sleep. The sleep of a city that never stops dreaming, never stops questioning, and never stops remembering. The stars above are the same stars that the librarians here mapped with such precision over 2,000 years ago. The constellation of Orion hangs low in the sky, a familiar friend in this ancient landscape. The night air is still, and the only sound is the distant rhythmic lap of the harbor and the rustle of the palms. You feel a profound sense of peace, a realization that knowledge is the one thing that time cannot truly destroy. Even if buildings fall and stones crumble, the ideas born in these halls continue to echo through the ages. You are standing at the very center of the human story, a guest in the sanctuary of the mind. The path ahead leads through the gardens and into the heart of the library itself. The shadows of the trees dance on the white stone, inviting you further into the silence. There is no rush. Every step is a meditation. Every breath is a connection to the past. As you prepare to enter the inner sanctum, let the quiet of the night settle into your bones. The journey through the streets of marble is complete, and the threshold of the great library waits for your touch. You move toward the inner courtyard, where a long, rectangular reflecting pool catches the light of the moon. The water is perfectly still, acting as a mirror for the stars above and the columns around it. It is here, in this quiet transition between the world of the city and the world of the book, that the true weight of Alexandria is felt. You are no longer just a traveler. You are a seeker, arriving at the one place on earth where every question has an answer waiting on a shelf of cedar. Take another slow, deep breath of the jasmine-scented air. The marble beneath your feet remains warm, a steady presence as you move into the deepest part of the royal quarter. The journey continues, flowing like the Nile itself, toward the center of all things. You cross the threshold from the grand, moon-washed boulevards of the royal district and step into the inner sanctum of the Mausoleum, the Temple of the Muses. The transition is subtle but profound, a shift in the very vibration of the air. As you leave the open streets behind, the vast horizon of Alexandria begins to fade, replaced by the soaring, elegant walls of the Academy. You are no longer in a place of commerce, politics, or the chaotic energy of a world-class port. You have entered a sanctuary where the only currency is the human mind and its infinite capacity for wonder. Before we walk deeper into these shaded porticos and hidden gardens, I invite you once more to find your center of peace. If you are finding a sense of rest in these journeys through time, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. These simple actions are the foundation that allows this channel to grow, and it costs nothing but a moment of your time to help me keep crafting these historical escapes for you. I also encourage you to leave a comment below. Perhaps tell me which great thinker of the ancient world you would most like to have met, or suggest a new historical location you would like us to explore together. Your voice and your presence are what make this community of history lovers so special. The Mausoleum is not merely a collection of buildings. It is a philosophy rendered in stone, water, and leaf. Ahead of you lies the Peripatos, the famous covered walkway that serves as the artery of the Academy. It is a long, majestic gallery lined with a forest of slender, fluted columns carved from the finest white marble. The moonlight, silver and sharp, filters through the spaces between these pillars, casting a rhythmic, hypnotic pattern of light and shadow across the floor. As you walk, the sound of your footsteps on the polished limestone has a soft, echoing quality, a rhythmic, hollow cadence that feels like a heartbeat in a vast, silent hall. There is no one else here at this late hour, yet the space does not feel empty. It feels inhabited by the lingering echoes of 1,000 quiet, intense conversations. You can almost imagine the philosophers of the past, Euclid tracing invisible circles in the dust with a wooden staff, or Aristarchus pointing toward the velvet sky. Pacing these same stones, their minds reaching for the very edges of the known universe. The stone itself seems to have absorbed the weight of their thoughts, creating an atmosphere of heavy intellectual gravity that pulls you toward a state of quiet reflection. To your right, the walkway opens into a vast central courtyard garden that breathes with the rhythm of the Egyptian night. This is the living heart of the Mausoleum. The smell here is a heady, cooling blend of damp earth, crushed herbs, and the sweet, heavy scent of night-blooming flora. You see the dark, broad leaves of papyrus plants growing in the shallow, stone-lined basins of a long, rectangular reflecting pool. The papyrus, the very plant that provides the physical medium for the library's scrolls, stands tall and graceful, its feathery, umbrella-like tops swaying almost imperceptibly in the cooling breeze from the Nile. Beside the papyrus, the pale, ghostly petals of the Egyptian lotus have closed for the night, floating like sleeping stars on the dark, obsidian surface of the water. The water in the pool is perfectly still, acting as a liquid mirror for the deep indigo of the sky. Every few minutes, a small ripple moves across the surface, perhaps caused by a cool gust of wind or a distant heavy drop of night dew, shattering the reflection of the constellations into 1,000 shimmering fragments before it settles back into a perfect, glassy calm. The sound of the water is a constant, low-frequency hum, the lifeblood of the city flowing through hidden terracotta pipes from the river, feeding the greenery and cooling the air of the courtyard. It is a sound that grounds you, a reminder of the eternal rhythm of the Nile that has sustained this civilization for thousands of years. As you wander deeper into the labyrinth of the garden, you pass by the statues of the 9 Muses, the divine sisters who oversee all human creativity and inquiry. In the soft, diffused moonlight, the white marble of the statues seems to glow with an inner, ethereal light. You see Calliope, the muse of epic poetry, holding her tablet with a look of serene focus. Clio, the muse of history, with her half-unrolled scroll. And Urania, the muse of astronomy, her chin tilted upward, her gaze forever fixed on the celestial spheres. These are not merely decorations. They are the spiritual guardians of this sacred precinct. The scholars who live and work here see themselves as servants of these goddesses, believing that all great ideas, whether they be in mathematics, medicine, or poetry, are a gift of divine inspiration. You stop for a moment before the statue of Clio, the patroness of history. Her stone eyes seem to look through you, into the vast expanse of time. You feel the connection between her world and yours, the realization that the human desire to remember, to record, and to understand is the thread that binds all centuries together. The silence of the garden is not a void, but a presence. It is a dense, velvet silence that allows you to hear the rustle of the palm fronds overhead, a sound like falling rain that never quite reaches the ground. The architecture around you is a masterclass in Hellenistic balance and restraint. The buildings are not meant to overwhelm the individual with their power, but to provide a perfect frame for contemplation. The porticos are deep and shadowed, offering protection from the blistering heat of the day and the damp, cool mists of the night. You notice the intricate carvings on the capitals of the columns, acanthus leaves so delicately rendered in stone that they seem as light and organic as the real plants growing in the garden. The walls of the gallery are adorned with frescoes that even in the dim light reveal scenes of great intellectual triumphs. The mapping of the Mediterranean, the calculation of the Earth's circumference, and the legendary debates of the Athenian schools. Imagine, for a moment, the Syssition, the great communal dining hall located just beyond the next courtyard. It is quiet now, the long tables of dark, polished wood standing empty in the shadows. But during the daylight hours, this is a place of vibrant, electric intellectual life. Unlike the scholars of other ancient cities, the members of the Mausion are supported entirely by the Ptolemaic kings. They are given the freedom to live, eat, and think without the distractions or the pressures of the outside world. It is a laboratory of human potential, where a mathematician might sit next to a lyric poet, and a physician might share a cup of wine with a grammarian. This cross-pollination of ideas is the secret of Alexandria's brilliance. It is the fundamental belief that knowledge is not a series of isolated islands, but a single, vast, and interconnected ocean where all currents eventually meet. As you stand in the silence of the garden, you can almost hear the ghost voices of these scholars, their debates echoing in the cool air, arguing over the nature of light, the origins of language, or the movement of the planets. As you move away from the communal halls and toward the more private sectors of the academy, the atmosphere shifts again. The spaces become smaller, more intimate, designed for the solitary seeker. You find yourself in a quiet, semicircular stone alcove, an exedra, built into a curved wall of smooth, cream-colored granite. Sit here for a long moment. Feel the cool, solid texture of the stone against your back, the way it grounds your body and settles your mind. From this vantage point, you can see the silhouette of the great library's main structure rising above the garden walls, a massive, windowless treasury of thought that looks more like a fortress than a building. The silence here is absolute, yet it is a living silence. It is the silence of a seed waiting beneath the soil to sprout. It is the silence of a reed pen poised just millimeters above a blank, expectant scroll. You realize that the entire Mausion was built to protect and cultivate this specific kind of silence. It was created to be a bubble of peace in the middle of one of the world's busiest, loudest cities. Outside these heavy walls, Alexandria is a place of relentless noise, of shouting merchants, clattering chariot wheels, and the roar of the harbor. But inside the Mausion, time slows down to a crawl. The hours are marked not by the passage of the sun across the sky, but by the slow progress of a thought, the careful completion of a complex calculation, or the delicate translation of an ancient verse. Look up through the open roof of the courtyard. The stars of the Egyptian sky are incredibly bright here, far removed from the flickering light of the city's street torches. You see the Great Bear, the Hunter Orion, and the shimmering, smoky belt of the Milky Way. These are the same sights that the librarians used to navigate the history of the world and the mysteries of the heavens. In this sanctuary, you feel a deep, physical connection to those who came before you. Their questions are your questions. Their search for meaning and order is your search. You are part of a lineage of curiosity that stretches back to the dawn of time. The air remains cool, carrying the sharp, clean scent of rosemary, thyme, and mint from the small herb gardens kept by the physicians of the academy. It is a fragrance that clears the senses and sharpens the mind. You feel a sense of profound readiness, a stripping away of the mundane worries of the world. You have walked through the harbor, moved through the grand mathematical streets of the city, and found rest in the gardens of the muses. The outer layers of the world have been discarded, leaving only the quiet anticipation of the knowledge that waits just ahead. Ahead of you, nestled at the end of a long, colonnaded hall, a set of smaller, more modest doors made of dark Lebanon cedar stand, slightly ajar. A faint, warm amber light spills out from the narrow gap, the soft glow of an oil lamp, perhaps left burning by a librarian who spent the night lost in the scrolls. As you approach, the smell of the damp garden is replaced by something drier, older, and infinitely more precious. It is the scent of aged papyrus, the sharp tang of cedar oil used to repel insects, and the faint metallic aroma of dried ink. Without a sound, you rise from the stone bench and move toward that sliver of golden light. Your journey through the gardens of the Mausean has prepared you for this moment. You are leaving the world of nature and entering the world of the written word. Every step you take toward that door is a transition from the physical and the fleeting to the eternal and the recorded. The columns of the garden fade into the darkness behind you as you focus all your attention on that warm, inviting glow. As you reach the cedar doors, you take one last deep breath of the night air, flavored with the salt of the sea and the sweetness of the jasmine. You are at the heart of the heart. The sanctuary has led you to the source. Your hand reaches out to touch the smooth, dark wood of the door. It feels heavy, solid, and full of history. And as the door creaks open with a soft, welcoming groan of ancient hinges, the true, profound silence of the great library begins to envelop you. A silence that does not represent the absence of sound, but the presence of 100,000 voices, all waiting for someone to listen. You step forward, the hard marble of the hallway giving way to the soft, woven reed mats of the interior. The transition is now complete. You are no longer under the open sky, but under the protection of every mind that has ever dared to dream, to observe, and to write. The journey flows on, deeper into the quiet, deeper into the light, where the scrolls wait in their cedar cradles, holding the secrets of a world that is no longer lost, but found in the palm of your hand. The hall before you is lined with high, recessed niches, each one filled with bundles of papyrus tied with linen threads. The light from the oil lamps flickers against the walls, dancing over the labels, the pitakia, that hang from the end of each scroll, bearing the names of authors who have been dead for centuries, yet whose voices are as clear as the air you breathe. You walk slowly, your eyes tracing the endless rows of knowledge. There is no rush. There is only the stillness, the scent of the cedar, and the feeling that you have finally arrived home, in the place where the memory of the world is kept safe. As the cedar doors of the Mausean close softly behind you, the world of the garden, the scent of jasmine, the rustle of the palms, and the cool night breeze, fades into a memory. You have entered the great library of Alexandria. The transition is immediate and profound. Here, the air is different. It is still dry and carries a weight that is almost tangible. It is the scent of deep time. It is a fragrance composed of aged papyrus, the sharp, medicinal tang of cedar oil used to preserve the precious fibers, and the faint, dusty aroma of dried ink and beeswax. This is the scent of human thought, captured and stilled upon thousands of surfaces, waiting for a pair of eyes to bring it back to life. Before we lose ourselves in these endless corridors of knowledge, I want to thank you for being a part of this journey. If the quiet of these scroll rooms is bringing you a sense of peace, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It costs nothing, but it is the heartbeat of this project, allowing me to continue building these long-format historical escapes for you. I also invite you to leave a comment below. Perhaps tell me which lost book of antiquity you wish had survived the ages, or suggest the next destination for our History to Relax series. Your presence and your thoughts are what make this library feel alive. Now, let us walk. The floor beneath your feet has changed. The cold echoes of the marble hallways have given way to thick, woven reed mats that cover the stone. They muffle the sound of your footsteps, turning your walk into a silent glide. The lighting here is soft and amber, provided by small, elegant oil lamps sitting on bronze wall brackets. The flames are steady, casting long, dancing shadows that play across the high vaulted ceilings. The light does not reach every corner, leaving deep pockets of velvet darkness between the shelves, creating an atmosphere of warmth, safety, and immense mystery. Look around you. You are standing in a long, high-ceilinged hall known as the bibliothèque. The walls are not bare stone. They are lined from floor to ceiling with a complex system of recessed niches or armaria. These are the cradles of history. Within these niches are shelves made of dark, polished cedar wood, and upon those shelves lie the scrolls. They are stacked with a precision that reflects the Greek obsession with order. Some are wrapped in protective linen sleeves, dyed in soft shades of saffron or indigo. Others are bare, showing the pale, fibrous texture of the papyrus. Each scroll is a cylinder of potential, a rolled-up universe. From the end of each scroll hangs a small, wooden or parchment tag known as a pitakos. These tags sway almost imperceptibly as you walk past, bearing the title of the work and the name of the author in neat black Greek script. As you move deeper into the hall, you pass the section dedicated to the poets. Here lie the works of Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey, not in a single volume as we know them today, but spread across dozens of individual scrolls. You see the tags for Sappho's lyric poems, the tragedies of Sophocles, and the comedies of Aristophanes. You can almost feel the vibration of the language held within the fibers. These are the voices of the human heart, captured in the scratch of a reed pen. The silence here is not empty. It is a full silence. It is the sound of 100,000 voices speaking at once in a frequency that only the mind can hear. It is the most concentrated gathering of human experience ever assembled in one place. Every scroll represents a life. A scholar who stayed up by the light of a flickering lamp. A traveler who recorded the wonders of a distant land. A mathematician who found a pattern in the chaos. The temperature in the scroll rooms is constant and comfortable. The thick stone walls of the library act as a natural insulator, protecting the fragile papyrus from the extreme heat of the Egyptian sun and the dampness of the harbor. It feels like a cocoon, a space where time has no jurisdiction. You find yourself slowing down, your breathing matching the steady, unhurried rhythm of the room. In the center of the hall, there are long, heavy tables made of dark wood, worn smooth by generations of scholars. On these tables, you see the tools of the trade. Bronze inkwells filled with thick black ink made of soot and gum. Sharpened reed pens, known as kalamos, resting in carved wooden trays, and small pumice stones used to smooth the surface of the papyrus. There is a stray scrap of parchment here, a half-finished diagram of a star system there. It feels as though the librarians have only just stepped away for a moment and will return at any second to continue their work. Walk to one of the niches and imagine reaching out to touch a scroll. The papyrus would feel dry and slightly textured, like the skin of an ancient tree. You can see the horizontal and vertical fibers woven together, a grid of nature transformed into a grid of thought. This material, harvested from the banks of the Nile, is the very fabric of Alexandria's power. The kings of Egypt knew that to control the papyrus was to control the flow of information, and they guarded this resource as fiercely as they guarded their gold. As you continue your walk, the hall opens into a side chamber dedicated to the Great Gathering, the legendary ship's decree. This is where the scrolls taken from the harbor were brought to be processed. Imagine the scene that took place here every morning. Crates of scrolls arriving from the docks, still smelling of the sea. The librarians would carefully unroll them, their eyes widening at a lost play from Athens or a medical treatise from Persia. They would hand the originals to a small army of scribes, who would sit in the adjacent scriptorium, their pens scratching rhythmically against the papyrus as they created perfect copies to be returned to the ship owners. The originals, of course, stayed here, in the dark, cedar-scented safety of the great library. This room is a testament to an obsession. The Ptolemies did not just want to own books, they wanted to own the book, the definitive version of every story ever told. They sent buyers to the markets of Rhodes and Athens, and even, as legend tells us, borrowed the official state copies of the Athenian tragedies, choosing to lose a massive financial deposit rather than return the precious scrolls. Standing here, you feel the weight of that ambition. It is a beautiful, quiet kind of madness, the desire to hold the entire world in a single room. You move toward a smaller, more private alcove at the far end of the hall. This is where the chief librarian would work. You see a chair with a high back and a footstool, positioned perfectly to catch the light of a large silver oil lamp. On the desk lies a massive scroll, partially unrolled. It is the Pinakis, the monumental catalogue created by the scholar Callimachus. It was the first of its kind, a map of the library itself, dividing all of human knowledge into categories: poetry, law, philosophy, history, and science. Before the Pinakis, a library was just a pile of scrolls. After it, a library became a system, an organized mind. As you look at the columns of names and titles, you realize that this was the moment humanity began to truly understand its own intellectual heritage. This was the birth of the index, the beginning of our ability to find what we're looking for in the vast sea of information. The amber light flickers, and for a moment, the shadows of the shelves look like the bars of a golden cage, protecting the thoughts within. You feel a sense of immense gratitude for this place. In a world of fleeting empires and shifting borders, the library was an anchor. It was a place where a person could go to find out what was true, what was beautiful, and what was possible. Take a deep breath. The scent of the cedar is stronger here, a grounding, earthy smell that settles deep in your chest. The silence is so profound that you can hear the very faint, rhythmic sound of the oil lamp's flame. It is a tiny, steady pulse in the heart of the temple. As you stand in the center of the room, looking up at the thousands of tags hanging from the shelves, you realize that you are standing in the presence of the dead, yet they have never been more alive. Their words are here, their dreams are here, and their discoveries are here. As long as these scrolls remain, they can never truly be forgotten. The library is a defiance of the grave. The night is deep now, and the world outside the cedar doors is far away. There is no wind here, no tide, no politics. There is only the light, the wood, and the word. You feel a wave of peace wash over you, a realization that the search for knowledge is a journey that never truly ends, and that you are now a small part of that eternal flame. Let the warmth of the amber light and the scent of the ancient papyrus wrap around you like a blanket. You have reached the core of Alexandria. You have found the place where the world remembers itself. You stay here for a long time, simply existing in the presence of the scrolls. The shadows continue their slow, silent dance on the ceiling, and the oil lamps burn with a steady, comforting glow. The journey through the scroll rooms is not a walk through a graveyard of paper, but a walk through a garden of the mind, where every leaf is a page and every fruit is a truth. In our next movement, we will look closer at the minds that inhabited this space, the scholars who sat at these tables and changed the way we see the stars, the earth, and ourselves. But for now, just be. Breathe in the cedar, listen to the silence, feel the weight of the scrolls. You are in the most important room in the world, and there is nowhere else you need to be. The journey continues, flowing like ink from a pen, moving from the physical scroll to the living thought. We stay in the quiet, in the light, in the sanctuary. The silence of the scroll rooms is not a hollow or empty thing. It is a silence that feels filled with a hidden electric energy, a weight that settles upon your shoulders like a heavy velvet cloak. As you stand in the very center of the great hall, the amber light of the oil lamps dancing in slow, rhythmic patterns across the dark cedar shelves, you begin to understand the sheer, staggering force of will that was required to gather these hundreds of thousands of voices into one single location. This was never a passive collection of books. It was a conquest. It was the Great Gathering, a multi-generational, centuries-long campaign to capture every thought, every map, every medical observation, and every lyric poem ever committed to papyrus by the human hand. It was an intellectual crusade, fueled by a hunger that no amount of gold could ever satisfy. Before we explore the legends of how these scrolls arrived at our feet and the extraordinary measures taken to secure them, I want to take a brief moment to thank you for continuing this long, peaceful journey with me. If you find yourself drifting into a state of deep peace as we walk these ancient halls together, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It costs nothing but a second of your time, but it is the single most important way you can support this work, allowing me to continue creating these long-format, immersive escapes for you. And as we sit here among the gathered scrolls of the world, I would truly love to hear from you. Leave a comment below telling me, if you could reach back through time and save just one single piece of lost knowledge or one specific book from the ancient world, what would it be? Your thoughts and your presence are what turn these scripts into a living, breathing community of history lovers. Now, let us turn our minds toward the heart of the library's magnificent obsession. Imagine, if you can, the great harbor of Alexandria as it was during the height of the Ptolemaic dynasty over 2,000 years ago. Every single day, the horizon of the Mediterranean was crowded with the white and saffron sails of ships arriving from every conceivable corner of the known world. There were tall, elegant merchant galleys from the Phoenician coast, heavy, broad-beamed grain ships from the Nile Delta, sturdy vessels from the Greek city-states, and exotic traders that had braved the Pillars of Hercules or navigated the Red Sea from as far away as India. They came to Alexandria for many things: for the salt, for the vast quantities of Egyptian grain, for the fine linens, and for the luxury of the royal city. But the kings who sat upon the throne of Egypt wanted something far more precious than gold, spices, or ivory. They wanted the contents of the ship's private libraries. There was a law in Alexandria, a law that was unique in all of history, whispered about in every port from Rome to Rhodes. It was known simply as the ship's decree. Every single vessel that dropped anchor in the Portus Magnus was immediately met, not just by the expected customs officials and tax collectors, but by a specialized delegation of agents from the Great Library. These men were not looking for contraband, hidden spices, or unpaid duties on wine. They were looking for books. Close your eyes and visualize the scene at the docks under the relentless brilliance of the Egyptian sun. The air is thick and heavy, a swirling mixture of sea salt, drying fish, hot stone, and the pungent aroma of harbor mud. A ship from the island of Rhodes has just arrived, its timber hull creaking with fatigue after a long voyage across the Aegean. As the sailors secure the thick hemp ropes to the marble pilings, the library's agents step onto the wooden deck. Their eyes are sharp, scanning the cabins, the storage chests, and the personal belongings of the passengers. They find a bundle of scrolls tucked away in a cedar chest, perhaps a rare handwritten account of the Persian Wars, or a collection of local hymns that have never been heard outside of a small village in Ionia. The captain might protest, explaining that these are his personal treasures, his only companions during long nights at sea. But the decree of the king is absolute and unyielding. The scrolls are confiscated on the spot. They are carefully wrapped in linen, placed in protective leather cases, and carried through the bustling, noisy streets of the city, through the royal quarter, and finally through the very cedar doors where you are standing now. Once inside the sanctuary of the library, these borrowed scrolls were not merely tossed onto a shelf. They were brought to a special processing chamber, a space that felt like a quiet island in the middle of a stormy sea. This room was filled with the clean, sharp scent of fresh ink and the persistent rhythmic scratch of reed pens against papyrus. Here, a small army of the world's finest scribes waited in perpetual readiness. These were men who had dedicated their entire lives to the curve of a single letter and the perfect horizontal alignment of a line of text. They were the silent engines of the library's growth. They would unroll the confiscated scrolls with hands that were as steady and delicate as a physician's. They would examine the texture of the papyrus, the quality of the ink, and the style of the handwriting. If the work was deemed valuable, and almost everything was, the task of copying would begin. Imagine the sound of that room during the quiet hours of the afternoon. It was a soft, atmospheric white noise. The sound of dozens of Calamos pens moving in unison across the fibrous surface of the papyrus. The occasional clink of a bronze inkwell, and the deep, steady breathing of men who were completely lost in the act of preservation. These scribes would create a perfect, letter-for-letter duplicate of the original scroll. Every nuance, every marginal note, and every stylistic flourish was meticulously recreated. When the work was finally completed, a curious and controversial exchange would take place. The newly created copy, fresh, clean, and beautiful, was sent back to the ship in the harbor to be returned to its owner. But the original, the authentic historical artifact that had traveled across the seas, was kept here. It was catalogued, labeled with its wooden tag, and placed permanently upon the cedar shelves of the great library. To the Ptolemies, the truth lay in the original hand, and they believed that as the world's greatest protectors of knowledge, they were the only ones fit to hold such treasures. The hunger of the kings for the written word was so profound that it often bordered on the criminal. One of the most famous legends concerns Ptolemy III and the city of Athens. At that time, Athens held the official, state-authorized manuscripts of the great tragic playwrights, Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides. These were the most sacred literary texts in the Greek world, the equivalent of the original scores of the world's greatest symphonies. They were kept under lock and key, guarded as the very soul of Athenian culture. Ptolemy sent an embassy to Athens with a bold request. He wished to borrow these original manuscripts so that his scribes in Alexandria could make perfect copies for the library. The Athenians, understandably, were terrified of losing them. They demanded a staggering security deposit of 15 talents of silver, a sum so vast it could pay for the construction of a small fleet of warships or feed an entire city for a year. Ptolemy paid the deposit without a moment's hesitation. The scrolls were carefully transported across the sea to Alexandria. But once they were safely behind these walls, the king's obsession overrode his honor. He had the scrolls copied, but then he simply kept the originals. He sent the new copies back to Athens and sent a message telling the Athenians they could keep the 15 talents of silver as payment. To the king of Egypt, a mountain of silver was a small price to pay for the original thoughts of Sophocles. He wanted the world to know that if you wished to see the true source of human wisdom, you did not go to Athens. You came here, to Alexandria. As you walk past the niches today, You see the breathtaking results of this relentless gathering. You see scrolls in languages that were already ancient when the foundations of this building were laid. There are Egyptian texts in hieratic script containing medical secrets from the age of the pyramids. There are Babylonian cuneiform tablets that have been painstakingly transcribed onto papyrus, detailing the movements of the planets over 1,000 years. There are Hebrew scriptures, Persian histories, and even mysterious accounts of the lands beyond the known maps. The library was the first truly international institution in human history. It was the first place on Earth where a scholar could sit in silence and compare the geometry of the Greeks with the mathematics of the Babylonians, or study the herbal medicine of the Nile alongside the philosophies of the East. It was a place where the world could finally see itself as a single, interconnected story. The scent of the cedar oil that permeates the air around you is a constant reminder of the care taken to preserve this influx of wisdom. Every scroll was treated like a royal guest of the highest honor. They were cleaned of dust, repaired with linen patches, and often wrapped in protective sleeves of fine silk or soft leather to ward off the dampness of the Mediterranean nights. Think of the Great Gathering, not as an act of theft, but as a desperate, noble rescue mission. In an ancient world defined by constant warfare, the burning of cities, and the slow, inevitable decay of time and neglect, the library was a fortress of preservation. It was a net cast wide across the turbulent sea of history, catching the fragile thoughts of humanity before they could fall into the abyss of the forgotten. Without the ship's decree, how many voices would have been silenced forever by a ship sinking in a storm? How many poems would have been burned as kindling in a nameless war? The library was the world's memory, held in a state of grace. As you stand here, the amber light of your lamp flickers against a shelf of unclassified scrolls, the ones that have only recently arrived from the harbor and are waiting for the attention of the chief librarian. You can almost feel the electric thrill of a scholar unrolling a scroll and realizing they are the first person in centuries to read a lost play or a forgotten map. It is the feeling of a bridge being built across the impossible gap of time. In the profound quiet of this hall, if you listen very closely, you can almost hear the rhythmic, distant thud of the harbor's waves against the marble quay outside the city walls. Each wave represents a new arrival, and each ship carries a new potential piece of the human puzzle. The library is a living, breathing organism, constantly expanding, constantly refining its understanding of what it means to be human. It is the heart of Alexandria, pumping the lifeblood of knowledge through the silent corridors of the mind. The warmth of the oil lamp is comforting on your skin. The air is perfectly still, perfectly dry. You feel a sense of immense scale, a realization that you are just one small part of an endless stream of seekers who have come to this sanctuary to find a piece of themselves in the words of others. The Great Gathering was not just a project for the vanity of kings. It was a gift for the future. It was a gift for us, so that we might walk these halls in our minds and know that we are not alone in our curiosity. As you linger among the shelves, let the weight of this collective effort settle into your heart. Think of the thousands of scribes whose names are forgotten, but whose work remains. Think of the harbor agents who spent their lives searching for beauty in the cargo holds of merchant ships. Think of the scholars who sat at these very tables, their eyes straining by the light of similar lamps, ensuring that the light of the world would never be extinguished. Stay here in the silence for a few more moments. Listen to the full silence of the scrolls. Every single cylinder of papyrus represents a ship that docked, a hand that wrote with purpose, and a mind that dared to ask, why? You are surrounded by the greatest treasure ever assembled in the history of our species, a treasure not of gold or jewels, but of pure, distilled thought. And in this sanctuary, the gathering never truly ends. The journey continues, moving from the physical act of gathering to the intellectual act of understanding. We stay in the quiet, in the amber light, in the sanctuary where the world's memory is held in a state of perfect, peaceful suspension. You are safe. You are at home. And the voices of the past are whispering to you in the stillness of the night. The silence of the great library has a specific quality. It is the silence of anticipation. As you move deeper into the heart of the bibliothèque, away from the processing rooms of the great gathering, you enter the spaces where the scrolls were not just stored, but lived. This is the realm of the scholars, the place where the ink on the papyrus was transformed into the architecture of the human mind. Here, the air seems to vibrate with a different frequency, the settled, heavy energy of focused contemplation. Before we walk alongside the ghosts of the great thinkers who once called this sanctuary home, I want to take a moment to welcome you back to the present stillness. If this journey into the minds of the past is helping you find your own inner peace, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It costs nothing but a heartbeat, yet it is the very foundation that allows me to keep these historical fires burning for you. And as we wander through these halls of genius, I invite you to leave a comment below. If you could sit on a stone bench in the Immersive and ask one question of an ancient scholar, what would it be? Your curiosity is the bridge that connects their world to ours. Now, let us slow our pace and listen to the echoes of the great minds. Imagine the scholars of Alexandria. They were not merely librarians. They were the first true citizens of a global intellectual community. They came from every corner of the Greek world and beyond, drawn by the gravity of the library's collection and the promise of a life dedicated entirely to the pursuit of truth. They lived within the walls of the mansion, their meals provided, their needs met, so that their only responsibility was to think, to observe, and to record. Think of Eratosthenes, a man who served as the chief librarian for many years. He was known by his peers as Pentathlon, a title given to athletes who excelled in 5 different sports, because he was a master of every field of knowledge: geography, mathematics, poetry, and history. But imagine him not as a distant figure of legend, but as a man standing in a sun-drenched courtyard of the mansion at noon. He had heard a story that in the city of Syene, far to the south, the sun at midday on the summer solstice shone directly down a deep well, leaving no shadow. Standing here in Alexandria, he noticed that even at high noon, a vertical pole still cast a slight shadow. In that simple observation of light and dark, his mind leaped across the horizon. He realized that if the sun's rays were parallel, the only way for the shadows to be different was if the surface of the earth was curved. Using nothing but a pole, the length of a shadow, and the measured distance between 2 cities, he calculated the circumference of the entire world. As you walk past the shelves of geography, you can almost see him sitting at a heavy cedar table, his reed pen moving across the papyrus, tracing the outline of a globe that he would never see from space, but which he understood perfectly through the power of pure reason. He was a man who lived in a city of stone, yet his mind encompassed the entire planet. A few aisles away, in the section dedicated to astronomy, you encounter the spirit of Aristarchus of Samos. In an age where almost everyone believed the Earth was the unmoving center of the universe, Aristarchus sat in the quiet of these rooms and looked at the data gathered by generations of Babylonian and Greek observers. He saw the way the planets wandered across the sky, and he made a daring, revolutionary leap. He suggested that the Earth was not the center, but that it and all the other planets revolved around the sun. Imagine him pacing the peripatos at night, the same stars we see tonight hanging over the harbor of Alexandria. To his contemporaries, his idea was a beautiful but impossible dream. Yet here, in the library, his words were preserved, a quiet seed of truth that would wait for nearly 2,000 years before it finally bloomed in the mind of Copernicus. In the library, no idea was ever truly lost. It was merely waiting for the right moment to be understood. The air in this part of the library smells faintly of wood smoke and old leather. It is a comforting, grounded scent. You pass by the medical wing, where the ghosts of Herophilus and Erasistratus reside. They were the first to systematically study the human body, mapping the nervous system and the flow of blood with a precision that was centuries ahead of its time. They sat in these very alcoves, perhaps by the light of an oil lamp identical to the one you carry, debating the connection between the brain and the senses. They saw the human body not as a mystery of the gods, but as a masterpiece of biological engineering that could be understood through careful observation. But the library was not just a place for scientists. It was the birthplace of the very way we read and study today. Think of Xenodotus, the first librarian to organize the works of Homer, or Callimachus, the poet-librarian who realized that a great library needed a map. Callimachus was the one who looked at the chaotic mountain of scrolls arriving from the harbor and realized that without order, knowledge is just noise. He created the Pinacex, a 120-volume catalogue that divided the world's wisdom into categories. Imagine him sitting in a small, quiet room, surrounded by thousands of scrolls with no labels. He spent his life creating a bridge between the reader and the book. He was the one who invented the idea of the author, the title, and the genre. Every time you look at a table of contents or search for a book by its subject, you are using a tool that was forged in the mind of a man who worked in this building 2 millennia ago. He understood that the library was not just a storehouse for the past, but a tool for the future. As you move through the silent aisles, you feel the weight of their collective presence. These were people who were not afraid to ask why and how. They were people who believed that the world was a puzzle that could be solved, and that the human mind was the key. They did not have the tools of modern technology, but they had something perhaps even more powerful, an infinite, unhurried curiosity, and the silence of the library in which to cultivate it. The amber light of your lamp flickers against a statue of a scholar in deep thought, his chin resting on his hand, a scroll half unrolled in his lap. It is a reminder that the library was a human space. These were people who felt the heat of the afternoon sun, who complained about the quality of their ink, who felt the sting of a colleague's criticism, and who experienced the sudden, breathtaking joy of a new discovery. They were our ancestors in every sense of the word. Listen to the silence once more. It is no longer just the silence of paper. It is the silence of 1,000 focused minds. It is the sound of a reed pen scratching against papyrus in the middle of the night. It is the sound of a low-pitched debate in a shaded courtyard. It is the sound of a scholar sighing with satisfaction as he finally finds the verse he has been searching for. The library gave these people a home. It gave them a community. In a world of shifting borders and constant change, the Mausian was an island of stability. It was a place where a person's value was measured not by their wealth or their birth, but by the clarity of their thought and the depth of their knowledge. It was the first true republic of letters. You find yourself standing before a shelf dedicated to the works of Hypatia, a scholar who lived in the later years of the library's history. She was a mathematician, an astronomer, and a philosopher who taught the most brilliant students of her age. Her presence here is a reminder that the light of Alexandria burned brightly for centuries, passed from hand to hand like a torch in a dark hallway. She stood for the idea that reason and philosophy were the highest callings of a human life, even in the face of a changing and often violent world. The warmth of the oil lamp in your hand feels like a connection to that torch. You are walking where they walked. You are breathing the same dry, cedar-scented air. You are looking at the same labels and the same shelves. The distance between your time and theirs feels smaller now, a thin veil that can be pushed aside with a single thought. The scholars of Alexandria did not work for fame or for money. They worked because they could not do otherwise. They were driven by a hunger for understanding. That is the defining characteristic of our species. They gathered the light of the world because they knew that darkness was always waiting at the gates. They were the guardians of our collective memory, the librarians of the human soul. As you stand in the stillness of the hall, let their spirits surround you. Feel the quiet confidence of Eratosthenes as he measures the earth. Feel the revolutionary wonder of Aristarchus as he looks at the sun. Feel the meticulous care of Callimachus as he labels a scroll. They are all here, in the silence, in the light, and in the words that they fought so hard to preserve. The journey through the minds of Alexandria is a journey into the best part of ourselves. It is a reminder that we are at our most human when we are seeking, when we are wondering, and when we are learning. The library was not just a building, it was an invitation to join the great conversation of history. And as you stand here, in the amber glow of the ancient world, you have accepted that invitation. Stay here in the presence of the giants for a little while longer. The night is quiet, the oil lamp is steady, and the scholars are your companions. You are safe, you are inspired. And the light they lit here so long ago is still burning, reflected in the curiosity of your own mind. The journey continues, moving from the scholars who inhabited the library to the enduring legacy they left behind. We stay in the quiet, in the amber light, in the sanctuary where the human mind found its first true home. The scrolls are silent, but the ideas within them are singing, a chorus of voices reaching across the ages to remind us of who we were and who we might become. As you move slowly toward the exit of this section, your shadow stretching long and thin across the reed mats, you carry a part of their genius with you. The Library of Alexandria was never just about the past. It was always about the people who would come after. It was about us. And in the stillness of this night, you can feel their gratitude, a soft whisper in the air, thanking you for remembering. The amber light continues its slow, rhythmic dance. The air is still. The minds of Alexandria are at rest, and so are you. The path ahead is clear, guided by the same stars that led the scholars home. The quiet of the great library's inner halls is a treasure. But as you move toward the southern gates of the royal district, you realize that the spirit of Alexandria could not be contained within a single building. The light of knowledge, once ignited, has a way of spreading, of seeking new corners to illuminate. You are now walking toward the Rakotis district, the older Egyptian heart of the city, where another temple of wisdom stands upon the highest ground. This is the Serapeum, the home of the daughter library. Before we climb the grand marble steps of this second sanctuary, I invite you to take a deep, steadying breath. If this journey through the twin hearts of ancient knowledge is bringing you a sense of profound rest, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It costs nothing but a moment of your time, but it is the very foundation that allows me to continue building these detailed historical escapes for you. I also encourage you to leave a comment below. If you were a citizen of ancient Alexandria, would you have spent your time in the regal halls of the great library, or the more public, soaring heights of the Serapeum? Your thoughts help shape the future of our travels together. Now, let us walk through the moonlit streets toward the hill of the Serapeum. The transition from the royal quarter to the Rakotis district is a shift in atmosphere. While the Maushan felt like a secluded ivory tower, the path to the Serapeum feels more connected to the pulse of the city itself. The streets here are still wide and orderly, but they carry the scent of the local markets, dried hibiscus, baked bread, and the lingering aroma of incense from the smaller street shrines. The air is slightly warmer here, away from the immediate cooling influence of the harbour, but a gentle breeze still flows through the colonnades, carrying the sound of the distant sea. As you approach the hill, you see the Serapeum rising before you like a crown. Built upon an artificial plateau, it is one of the most magnificent temple complexes in the ancient world. It is dedicated to Serapis, a god created by the Ptolemies to unite the Greek and Egyptian people, a god of healing, the sun, and the mysteries of the afterlife. But for the seekers of the world, the temple's greatest glory is the library, housed within its massive colonnaded walls. The climb up the ceremonial staircase is a slow, meditative process. Each step is a wide slab of polished white marble that glows with an ethereal light under the Egyptian moon. As you ascend, the city of Alexandria begins to open up beneath you. You see the grid of lights from the street torches, the dark silhouettes of the palaces, and the distant, pulsing beacon of the Pharos lighthouse. The higher you climb, the quieter the world becomes. The noise of the city's evening life, the distant barking of a dog, the clatter of a late returning cart, fades into a soft, indistinct hum. At the summit, you enter the great court of the Serapeum. It is a vast, open square surrounded by a high, majestic portico of red granite columns. The scale here is monumental, designed to make you feel the presence of the divine and the eternal. In the center of the court stands a single, towering obelisk, its hieroglyphs telling stories of pharaohs who reigned thousands of years before Alexander was born. The shadow of the obelisk stretches across the marble floor like the hand of a giant clock, marking the slow, silent passage of the night. The daughter library is located within the thick, cool walls of the portico. While the great library in the Maushan was primarily a place for the royal scholars and the elite thinkers supported by the king, the Serapeum was intended to be more accessible, a library for the public, for the visiting traveler, and for the students who flocked to Alexandria from across the Mediterranean. If the Maushan was the mind of the city, the Serapeum was its soul. As you step into the library wing of the temple, you find yourself in a space that is both familiar and different. The smell is the same, the dry, comforting scent of papyrus, the sharp tang of cedar oil, and the earthy aroma of old ink. But the architecture here is more vertical, more soaring. The niches for the scrolls are built into walls of golden-hued limestone that seem to absorb the amber light of the oil lamps, creating a warmth that feels almost golden. This is a place of popular wisdom. Here, you find the copies of the great works of the Maushan, but also practical texts, manuals on agriculture, treatises on the laws of the sea, maps for the caravan routes that stretched into the heart of Africa, and scrolls of philosophy meant to guide a person through the trials of daily life. It was a place where a merchant could learn the history of the lands he traded with, or where a young student could spend the afternoon lost in the verses of Homer. Walk through the aisles of the Serapeum. The silence here is deeper, perhaps because of the height of the hill and the thickness of the temple walls. You notice the reading alcoves, small, semicircular spaces with stone benches that look out over the city. Imagine a student sitting here during the day, the breeze from the sea ruffling the edges of his scroll, his eyes moving between the written word and the living city below. There is a sense of continuity here. The feeling that knowledge is not a hidden secret to be guarded, but a gift to be shared with anyone who has the curiosity to seek it. The Serapeum also served as a place of healing. In the lower levels of the temple, there were rooms for incubation, where the sick would come to sleep, hoping for a dream from the god Serapis that would reveal a cure. This connection between the library and the hospital is profound. The ancients believed that to heal the body, one must also nourish the mind. A scroll of philosophy or a beautiful poem was considered as much a medicine as a draught of herbs or a surgeon's knife. As you walk past the medical scrolls, you feel the compassionate energy of this place, a sanctuary for the whole human being. In the center of the library hall stands a massive, bronze statue of Serapis himself. He is depicted as a bearded man with a crown shaped like a grain measure, a symbol of the abundance of Egypt. His eyes, made of polished gemstones, seem to follow you with a look of quiet, paternal wisdom. At his feet sits Cerberus, the three-headed dog of the underworld, reminding the seekers that knowledge is the only light that can penetrate even the deepest darkness. The amber light of your lamp casts a long shadow of the statue against the shelves. For a moment, it looks as though the god himself is reaching out to touch the scrolls. It is a reminder that in Alexandria, the pursuit of knowledge was a sacred act. To learn was to honor the gods. To record a truth was to build a temple that could never be destroyed. As you linger in the daughter library, you realize that this was the true legacy of the Ptolemies. They didn't just build a private collection. They built a culture of inquiry that permeated the entire city. The Serapeum was a testament to the idea that a city's greatest wealth is not its gold or its harbors, but the education of its people. It stood as a beacon on the hill, visible from every corner of Alexandria, a constant reminder that the doors of wisdom were open to all. The night is reaching its quietest hour. The oil lamps in the Serapeum are kept burning by the temple priests, their small flames reflected in the polished marble floors. You find a quiet bench near the edge of the portico and sit for a moment, looking out over the sleeping city. From this height, Alexandria looks like a map made of stars. The grid of the streets, the dark mass of the harbor, and the steady, rhythmic flash of the Pharos lighthouse all come together in a symphony of order. You feel a profound sense of peace. You have seen the heights of the royal quarter and the communal heart of the Temple Hill. You have walked among the scrolls of the elite and the scrolls of the people. You realize that the Great Library was not just a building, but an atmosphere, a way of living that prioritized the mind and the memory of our species. The air on the hill is cooler now, a crisp, clean wind that smells of the high desert and the distant sea. It is a refreshing breath that clears the senses. You think of the millions of words stored in the walls behind you, and you feel a deep gratitude for the scribes and the scholars who ensured that these voices would have a home. The Serapeum was the daughter of the Great Library, but in many ways it was its most important extension, carrying the light of the Mausean into the lives of the many. The silence of the temple is heavy and comforting. It is the silence of a mountain, a place that has seen empires rise and fall, yet remains unchanged in its purpose. As long as these stones stand, and as long as these scrolls are guarded, the memory of humanity is safe. You feel a connection to every student who ever climbed these steps, every traveler who ever sought refuge in these aisles, and every priest who ever tended these lamps. As you prepare to leave the hall of the Serapeum, you take one last look at the shelves. The wooden tags, the pitakia, are still, their names of authors and titles waiting for the morning light. The god Serapis remains in his bronze majesty, presiding over the treasures of the mind. You walk back toward the grand staircase, your footsteps light on the marble. The descent is as meditative as the climb. With every step, you return closer to the world of the city. But you carry the stillness of the temple with you. You are no longer just a visitor to Alexandria. You are a witness to its grandest vision, the belief that knowledge is the universal language of mankind. The journey flows on, moving from the twin libraries of the city to the final, enduring echo of their legacy. We stay in the quiet, in the amber light, in the sanctuary on the hill where the mind and the spirit were found to be one and the same. The stars above are fading as the first hint of dawn touches the eastern horizon over the Nile. But the light of the scrolls remains undimmed, a fire that burns forever in the heart of history. You reach the bottom of the stairs and step back onto the streets of the Rakotis district. The city is still asleep, but you can feel the first stirrings of the morning. The journey is almost complete, but the peace you have found in these halls will stay with you long after the sun has risen. For now, let the silence of the Serapeum be your blanket, and the light of the Pharos be your guide. You have walked through the greatest centers of wisdom the world has ever known, and you are changed by the experience. Sleep, or simply exist in this state of perfect historical calm. The Library of Alexandria is not a ghost, it is a part of you now. And in that realization, there is an eternal rest. The stars above the Mediterranean are beginning to pale, the deep, velvet indigo of the Egyptian night softening into a hazy, ethereal violet as the first whispers of dawn prepare to rise over the distant, winding Nile. You have walked through the salt-heavy air of the harbour, navigated the mathematical perfection of the royal streets, lingered in the emerald silence of the Mausillon's gardens, and sat in the amber, flickering glow of the scroll rooms. You have climbed the sacred hill of the Serapeum and felt the public heartbeat of the daughter library, where the common man and the elite scholar shared the same air. Now, as the world of the ancient city begins the slow, inevitable transition from the dream of the night to the bright reality of the morning, we reach the final part of our journey, the legacy of Alexandria, the eternal echo that refuses to be silenced by time, by fire, or by the shifting, relentless sands of the desert. As the golden sun of the Egyptian morning climbs higher into the sky, the marble of the city begins to glow with a brilliant, blinding white. The shadows of the colonnades retreat, and the cool, damp air of the night evaporates into the warmth of the day. Our journey through the streets, the gardens, and the silent, cedar-scented halls of Alexandria has come to its natural rest. You can feel the city beginning to breathe with the energy of the living, the calls of the marketplace, the rhythmic splash of oars in the harbour, and the low murmur of students gathering for their first lessons of the day. But for you, the traveller of time, the stillness of the library remains. It is a quiet pocket of peace that you carry within you, a sanctuary that does not vanish just because the sun has risen. Take a slow, deep breath, feeling the air fill your lungs, and then leave them in a steady, unhurried stream. If this journey has helped you find a moment of calm in a busy world, I am truly grateful that you allowed me to be your guide. Before we part ways, I invite you once more to like this video and subscribe to History to Relax. Your support is the very thing that makes these long-form immersions possible. It is how we keep the lights burning in these digital halls of history. And don't forget to leave a comment below. Let me know how this story made you feel, or perhaps tell me where you would like our next voyage to begin. Every word you write helps this channel grow and helps me understand what parts of the past bring you the most comfort. As we slowly return to the present moment, think of the scholars we left behind in the Mausillon. Think of the scribes whose pens are just now beginning their daily rhythm against the papyrus. They did not know our names, and they could not have imagined the world we live in today, but they worked for us nonetheless. They believed that knowledge was a gift to the future, a bridge built of ink and effort that would allow their thoughts to reach across the centuries. Standing here, in the quiet of your own space, you are the recipient of that gift. You are the future they were writing for. The Library of Alexandria is often mourned as a tragedy, a lost treasure house of human genius. But perhaps the true tragedy would be to forget the lesson it taught us, that our greatest strength lies in our curiosity and our willingness to listen to the voices of those who came before. The library was a place where the world came to understand itself, and that work is never truly finished. It continues every time you look at the stars with wonder, every time you seek to understand a perspective different from your own, and every time you choose to preserve a memory rather than let it fade. Feel the weight of your body against the surface beneath you. Notice the temperature of the air in your room, the faint sounds of your own surroundings, and the steady, rhythmic beat of your own heart. You are back in the present, but you are not the same as when we started. You carry with you the scent of the cedar oil, the glow of the amber lamps, and the profound, heavy silence of the scrolls. These are not just historical details, they are anchors of peace. Whenever you feel overwhelmed by the noise and the speed of the modern world, remember that you have a key to the library. You can return to these halls whenever you need to find your center. The Pharos lighthouse has long since crumbled, its stones repurposed into a fortress that still stands by the sea, but the light it represented is inextinguishable. It is the light of reason, the light of art, and the light of human connection. As you move forward into your day, or as you drift off into a deep and restorative sleep, let that light be your guide. Let it remind you that you are part of a long, beautiful lineage of seekers and dreamers. You are never truly alone when you are surrounded by the thoughts of the ages. I want to thank you for your time, your attention, and your presence. In a world that often demands our speed, choosing to slow down and listen to the echoes of the past is a radical act of self-care. You have honored the memory of Alexandria by simply being here, by allowing its story to unfold in the theater of your mind. As the video fades to black and the sounds of the ancient harbor drift away, let the peace you have found settle deep into your bones. Keep the flame of your own curiosity burning bright. Value the silence. Seek the truth. And remember that the great library of human experience is always open, waiting for you to walk through its doors once more. The journey is complete for today, but the history remains. Stay in the light. Stay in the peace. And until we meet again among the shadows of another era, may your rest be deep and your dreams be filled with the wisdom of the world. Thank you for being here. Good night. And may the echoes of Alexandria bring you a long and perfect rest. Before we follow this echo into the modern world and see where these ancient thoughts have traveled, I want to express my deepest, most sincere gratitude to you for walking this long, winding path with me. If this immersion into the light of Alexandria has brought you a sense of stillness, peace, and a momentary escape from the noise of today, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It is a simple act that costs nothing, but it is the very soul of this project, providing the foundation that allows me to continue weaving these long, detailed historical tapestries for you. And as we stand at the threshold of the morning, at the end of this long voyage, I invite you to leave a comment below. Tell me what the idea of the Library of Alexandria means to you, or perhaps share a historical mystery you wish we could solve together. Your presence is the bridge that keeps history alive, and I am honored to have had you as my companion through the dark. Now, let us turn our gaze toward the brightening horizon and listen to the deep, resonant resonance of the great library. As you stand on the cool marble quay one last time, watching the silhouette of the Pharos lighthouse gradually lose its brilliant artificial fire against the natural growing radiance of the sky, a common question might drift through your mind like a wisp of smoke. What truly happened to the books? We are often told the story of the Great Fire, the tragic, haunting image of hundreds of thousands of scrolls turning to grey ash in a single night of flame and chaos, the sum of human knowledge vanishing into the smoke of war. But as you stand here in the profound stillness of the dawn, breathing in the cool, humid air of the harbour, I want you to consider a different, more hopeful perspective. The Library of Alexandria was never just a physical building made of stone, mortar, and cedar. It was a state of mind, an intellectual atmosphere that permeated the very air of the Mediterranean. And while stone can certainly crumble and papyrus can be consumed by heat, an idea, once it has taken root in the collective consciousness of humanity, is nearly impossible to destroy. Think of the way a ripple moves across the surface of a deep, still pool. Long after the stone that caused it has sunk to the bottom and disappeared from sight, the ripples continue to move outward in concentric circles, touching the furthest, most hidden shores. The library was that stone, dropped into the center of the ancient world, and the ripples of its existence are still moving through our world today, 2 millennia later. When we talk about the loss of the library, we often forget how much of its light actually escaped the flames. The scholars of Alexandria were not just collectors or hoarders of scrolls. They were the world's first great distributors. Every time a ship left the Portus Magnus with a returned copy of a scroll, a piece of Alexandria's DNA was exported to a distant land. Every time a student finished their years of study at the Mausean and travelled home to Rome, to Athens, to Antioch, or to the dusty edges of the imperial frontiers, they carried the methods, the logic, the stories, and the scientific rigors of the library in their minds. The spirit of the library did not die. It migrated. It was a living thing that sought new hosts as the old ones faded. It moved into the great, hushed scriptoriums of the Byzantine Empire, where dedicated monks spent their lives painstakingly copying the Greek classics that the Alexandrian librarians had once rescued and categorized. It moved into the magnificent House of Wisdom in Baghdad during the Islamic Golden Age, where scholars translated the works of Euclid, Aristotle, and Ptolemy into Arabic, adding their own genius to the foundation and preserving the light of science and philosophy during the centuries when much of Western Europe was shrouded in the deep, uncertain shadows of the early Middle Ages. It moved into the monasteries of Ireland and the universities of the Renaissance, where the sudden rediscovery of these very texts sparked a new explosion of human potential and inquiry. As you breathe in the cool, salt-tinged morning air, realize that the Library of Alexandria did not truly perish. It decentralized. It became the invisible blueprint for every library, every museum, and every university that followed in its wake. When you walk into a quiet room today, filled with books organized by subject, category, and author, you are walking through a ghost of the Mausean. When you use a digital index to find a specific passage in a sea of information, you are using a tool that was forged in the mind of Callimachus as he labored over his Pinechis. When you look at a map of the world and see the logical lines of latitude and longitude, you are seeing the earth through the eyes of Eratosthenes, the man who measured the world with a stick and a shadow. The Library of Alexandria is not a ruin buried under the modern city. It is the very foundation upon which our modern understanding of the world is built. The city of Alexandria around you is beginning to wake from its slumber. You hear the first, distant, melodic calls of the street vendors preparing their stalls. You hear the soft, rhythmic splashing of fresh water as the public fountains are cleaned for the day, and the scraping sound of a broom sweeping a marble courtyard. But the transition to the day does not shatter the peace you have found in the night. In fact, it reinforces it. You realize that the work of the library, the constant gathering, the careful organizing, and the generous sharing of knowledge, is a process that never truly ends. It is a baton passed from one generation to the next, a continuous, flickering flame that we all have an individual responsibility to tend. The legacy of Alexandria is also a profound reminder of our shared, universal humanity. In those cedar-scented scroll rooms, it did not matter if an observation about the stars came from a Babylonian priest in a ziggurat, an Egyptian mathematician on the banks of the Nile, or a Greek philosopher in the streets of Athens. What mattered was the truth of the observation, the beauty of the verse, and the clarity of the thought. The library was the first place in history where humanity tried to see itself as a single, coherent, and interconnected whole. It was the birth of the idea that we are all part of a grand eternal conversation that transcends borders, languages, religions, and even time itself. As you stand here, listening to the morning air, you are a vital part of that conversation. By remembering this place, by valuing the silence and the wisdom it represented, you are keeping the library alive in the only way that truly matters. Look at the water of the harbor. It is now a pale, shimmering silver, reflecting the first sharp rays of the sun as it breaks over the horizon. The Pharos has finally stopped its rhythmic pulse, its great bronze mirrors resting as the sun itself has now taken over as the world's beacon. But the memory of that artificial light remains in the minds of every sailor who ever found their way home because of it. The library taught us that even in a world of constant change, of shifting empires and falling monuments, there are things that are truly eternal. A beautiful line of poetry, a mathematical proof that reveals the structure of the universe, a map of the heavens. These are the anchors that hold us steady when the unpredictable storms of history blow. You feel a profound sense of closure, yet also a sense of fresh beginning. The journey through the physical, stone and marble space of ancient Alexandria is coming to an end. But the journey through its intellectual landscape is only just starting. You carry the scent of the cedar, the warmth of the sun-baked marble, and the absolute stillness of the scroll rooms within you. They are a part of your own inner sanctuary now, a quiet place you can return to whenever the modern world becomes too loud, too chaotic, or when the darkness seems a bit too deep. The great bronze doors of the mausoleum are opening now with a low, resonant groan, and the first scholars are stepping out into the morning light, their voices low and thoughtful as they begin their day's labor. They do not know that their building will one day be a legend whispered about by people thousands of years in the future. They only know that there is work to be done, a scroll to be read, a calculation to be checked, and a truth to be found. Their dedication is their legacy. Their quiet, persistent, and humble search for understanding is the greatest gift they gave to the future. Take one last look at the city of Alexandria as the light fills the streets. The white walls are brilliant and blinding now. The palms are a vivid, lush emerald green, and the harbor is a bustling, energetic hive of activity. It is a city of life, of movement, and of infinite restless curiosity. The library is at its center, not just as a building, but as a pulse, a rhythm. It is the steady, quiet heartbeat of a civilization that decided, for a few glorious centuries, that knowing was more important than conquering, and that understanding was more valuable than gold. As you step away from the quay and begin to merge back into the flow of time, do not feel a sense of loss for what was burned. The Library of Alexandria is not gone. It is in the very words I am speaking to you now. It is in the technology that allows us to connect across thousands of miles and different time zones. It is in every question you ask, every book you open, and every moment you spend in quiet reflection. It is the eternal echo of our best selves, a reminder that we are at our most magnificent when we are seeking the light, when we are curious, and when we are at peace. The dawn is full now, the sky a clear, radiant, and hopeful blue. The ancient world is at peace, and so are you. The journey through the halls of Alexandria has reached its destination, not in a physical place, but in a feeling of connection, of continuity, and of profound historical rest. You are a guardian of the memory now. You are a librarian of the spirit. The air is warm and filled with the promise of the day. You walk forward, your footsteps light and steady, carrying the silence of the scrolls and the brilliance of the pharos within your heart. The story of Alexandria does not end with a fire or a ruin. It continues in you, in your curiosity, and in your peace. Stay in this stillness. Stay in this light. The library is always open, and the world is waiting for your wonder. Sleep if you are resting, or walk forward into your day with the quiet, unshakable confidence of a scholar. The light is with you, the legacy is yours, and the silence of the great halls is your eternal companion.